Good evening and welcome to a slightly less than professional live stream number 46. We were doing these live streams every couple of weeks at one stage. We did them every week. I think that was during the pandemic, but we're now down to every 3 weeks. Although I think I'm just trying to remember the next time we're doing one. Yes, actually, it will be in 3 weeks' time. It'll be a joint one with Mr. Coleman of the Rubbish Mechanic because he is very keen on live streams. He likes doing the joint ones with me for some reason. I don't know precisely why he does, but he seems to enjoy them. So there we go. We've got this beer here. I'm sorry about the funny angle, by the way. I had to do this because the phone that I normally live stream on is a bit low on battery, and I might see if I can adjust this slightly up and see if that's any better. No, that's worse. So we'll just have to go with that. I have got the I've got the laptop here, so I can actually keep track of what's going on in terms of the comments and things like that are happening. Mark from Bad Book says good evening. Good evening to you, sir. Let's open up this can of lager from Aldi that I picked up yesterday. That'll do nicely, won't it? So tonight we're going to be looking at... maybe I can get this up slightly higher. Oh, that's bad. I don't see... Is that actually really any better or not? That's as high as it goes. Okay, we'll have to just go with that then. I'm going to stay where it is. Apologies, viewers. Never said this was in any way professional because it's not. And that's going to fall over if I do that, so we'll have to do it like this. Right. Yeah, it's tedious doing this kind of thing. Just wait a second. Gosh, that's rubbish. You know, I always tell people we're the home of no budget reviews, very vague vlogs, and slightly shambolic shuffles, and they don't really get the sort of idea that everything's a bit rubbish on this channel. But you've just witnessed it, so there we go. So we're talking about, actually, tonight, the career of Mr. Ian Seabrook from the Hubnut channel, a man who's been tremendously inspirational to a lot of people. Let's just see who he's basically kind of inspired. Steph from iDriver Classic, Mr. Westby from Twin Cam, tons and tons and tons of people, including me. I don't know what it is about Ian Seabrook, but he seems to sort of have given this opportunity to a whole generation of people, and that includes me, of sort of showing that, you know, you can kind of have a go at doing automotive YouTube. It doesn't matter if you don't have a big outside broadcast crew. It doesn't matter if you kind of wear slightly strange clothes or you look a bit strange. You can kind of do it and people enjoy it, and it's the sort of things that, you know, you're passionate about, and often these cars that you're passionate about are quite ordinary ones, and there's no particular reason why you are. They're not the best cars, they're not the most exciting cars, they're generally very sort of mundane and ordinary, but also sometimes very unusual. And he started his channel, I think, in 2013 from memory. I think one of the first videos on there, from what I can understand, is it was about running a Nissan Leaf for a week. And Nissan Leaf was quite a new thing. They came out around 12 years ago from memory. And, you know, he and I do have this sort of kind of fascination for the electric cars, particularly the older ones that were around, you know, Mitsubishi i-MiEVs and the Volkswagen E-Up, the first one, and things like that. I found those quite interesting. and you know, back in 2018 when I started the channel, you know, electric cars were nowhere near where they are now. When I used to do the top 10 best-selling cars updates in late 2018, I can assure you the sales mix of cars then looked totally, utterly different. Electric cars were just not even on the radar at all. I think they made up, well, under sort of like 2% of the cars that are being sold at the time. Now it's very much changed. Um, but he kind of had been a Leaf for a week and started buying and selling really, really terrible cars. He was working on several publications, retro Japanese, uh, classic Jaguar, I think he worked on as well. Lots of Kelsey Media publications and things like that. And you know, he lived just near Devil's Bridge. I think it was actually near where the little railway is that I've been on myself, going down to Aberystwyth. And you know, there was just no pretense. It was all done on phone or several phones back in the day. It's not now. It's done on an action camera that he's had for, for 4 years. I've still got a phone that I record quite a lot of the channel on. But it's not actually this one. It's a different one, and I've had that for about the same amount of time. It still works. I use other ones as well sometimes, but you know, it's just the sort of thing that you just have a go, and you know, your kind of passion and sort of knowledge about things are more important than the sort of slick editing and fancy graphics and music and all this sort of thing, and fluid head tripods and shotgun microphones and that kind of thing. That you can actually just have a go, and you know, people will like it, despite the fact that some of what you do might be quite shambolic, and you know, that's really sort of Ian Seabrook all over, isn't it? So we'll have to look at these comments now, and then we'll discuss some of the other. This is some of my favourite videos that Ian Seabrook ever did. Chambers 101 says good evening. Good evening to you, sir. Mr. Adam Toms with his little appropriate membership sticker there. Good evening, sir. Mr. Paulie Galtieri says good evening. I've literally just come back from a secret mission in Derbyshire. That is excellent, sir. I do know what that mission was about as well. Oreo the Skunk _official says hello. Yes, good evening. Lloyd's not actually my first name. A lot of people make this mistake, and I'm just so used to it now. It doesn't really bother me. But that's not actually my my first name. It's my surname. I don't know why people assume that when you have a business that it's definitely going to be your first name rather than your surname. But a lot of people just assume that. Stiff Upper Lip says hello, sir. Hello to you, sir. Mark from Badworks makes a very good point. I subscribe to Ian Seabrook's Club Nut channel just as he was leaving the Japanese car magazine, which is retro Japanese, if I remember correctly. Yes, there was a time around 2018, and so just about the time that I started, when he left doing kind of his main job as being a magazine freelance writer and editor. And as far as I understand it, from having spoken to him myself a few times, that was a decision which he hasn't regretted at all. Lots of the magazines, even the ones that he worked on, have actually either adapted, like Classics World has a very successful YouTube channel now, which for many years was smaller than mine, not that it matters particularly, because Mr. Miller from the Miller Corner channel, who I know quite well now, he actually runs all that content, I think. So, you know, no problem there or anything like that. But they've sort of adapted and sort of do a sort of hybrid thing. I'm sure you can still buy a Classics World magazine if you want to, but I don't collect the magazines anymore, really. The only magazines I really get are the ones from the Volvo Owners Club. And, you know, those are quite interesting, but you can't turn off that subscription. Another way, you know, I'd prefer to receive that content in other ways. But he realised that actually the future was on sort of online video rather than publications. In fact, that's a whole, like, topic for maybe, you know, another time if we continue the very vague vlogs past the number 100, which I'm going to be recording next week. If we make more of those. Are classic car magazines dead? That's quite a good topic. And you know, he doesn't say it sort of entirely um, you know, that there's no future in his magazines, but he sees far more future in online video content. And I think he's right. It's one of these strange things. When I go to these events that the SMMT run, and you would have seen many slightly shambolic SMMT reviews because we've done quite a few of those now. I am not. I am not a journalist. I never consider myself a journalist. I don't consider myself like a motoring expert or anything like that. I source cars for private clients. That's my job. The YouTube channel I have started out as an extension of the business, and sometimes it does get me clients. It's not the best way of getting clients, really. Most of it's through word of mouth from that point of view. But there are a lot of things which cross over. I've made several videos after I've just filmed. Sorry, I've just sourced cars for client. I sourced a car for a client, in fact, just a couple of weeks ago, actually. It's actually the most common type of car that I've ever sourced for people. There's one type of car. I think I've sourced 5 of them now. I'm not telling you what it is. Some of you might already know what the answer to this question is. It comes under 2 different brands, but they're essentially the same car. Yeah, by far the most common car that I've actually sourced for clients. Some of you might know. If you know, write it down. But maybe you don't know this. But his was just kind of, he just wanted to make videos, and I suppose, first of all, documenting the week with the Nissan Leaf, and then, he was sampling some cars for sort of review, and he's been through so many cars. There are various videos on his channel where he goes through his car history in detail, really, really detailed. So many different cars. I'm not at all like him. And actually, if you've been following the channel a very long time, I mean, we're talking before 2018, which is sort of more kind of classic days of him in some ways. Not that today isn't interesting. I mean, I don't have time these days to watch all his videos, really. I make so many of my own, and there's so many more interesting channels now that tickle my interests on YouTube than there used to be. There's new ones coming all the time. That I just don't have the time to watch all his videos anymore. If ones particularly interest me, then I will watch them, but I suspect many of you are like that. You don't watch every single video that somebody puts out. I don't think a lot of you watch all my videos, and I don't expect you to, because I make a lot of them. But the schedule of videos which you have as a channel of the size that Ian Seabrook now has, over 100,000 subscribers. I remember when he had sub 10. It's a long time ago now, that. Now he's on over 100. And so at that kind of level, you have to keep on a very, very tight schedule and keep going. And you have to, if you're relying upon that sort of source for your income, it's it's a very different experience from me, where I'm not reliant upon the income. You'll notice I don't talk an awful lot about like that side of things, and because I've realised that actually that thing is not the most important thing. It is really that you enjoy what you're doing, and I enjoy what I'm doing, and that's really more important than saying, well, this is going to ever get me into a stage where I can just do YouTube videos full time. It's not. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon for me. Maybe one day, but I just come to the realization. A lot of people do this. I mean, there's so many people I could tell you who have also had to realize this, that it's okay. It's okay if it doesn't happen. It's okay. I'll just continue to do what I do anyway, but just kind of have to make certain decisions, which mean I spend less money on the channel than I used to. But that's okay. Let's have a look at these comments then. Paulie Gartu makes a very good point here. I like the mix of cars that Ian owns personally in reviews. Yeah, he's had some good ones and some really bad ones. Some are better than others. City Rover, yeah, City Rover. That is the worst car I've ever driven. I've driven 2 of them, and they're both awful. I know the end that's become of his City Rover is quite sad, but yeah, they're dreadful cars. They really are awful. Um, the XJ40 type Daimler, I think the six-cylinder Daimlers of the XJ40 type were just called Daimler Saloons or something. I remember that one back in the day. He went to some stupid place, like Scotland or something, to buy that, and it was rubbish. It was awful. I've done that. I've bought cars I've seen myself as well, and yeah, sometimes it doesn't work out very well. Mr. Alan Tom says, I'm a big fan of Mr. Seabrook. I think you should watch the videos from the early days of Classic Hub, which was the name of the channel before Hub Nut actually. It started off as Classic Hub. So that means you would have been watching, oh gosh, long time ago then, far before I started. Broad scope with appeals. I like bread and butter cars and supercars. Yeah, you don't see too many supercars on my channel. There's a reason of that is I'm not going after them. Now we will drive some high performance cars next month on a track day that I've actually booked for myself. I've not done one since 2018, and actually that track day I did 20 actually on the channel. It's a very early couple of videos that I did, but I asked to use the camera in both the cars I was driving on the track, and I just uploaded that to YouTube before I could edit actually. Sean Cook says, good evening, sir. Good evening to you, sir. Bad Books is talking to Paul Gauthieri about the collection cable for the XJ40. Yeah, that was crazy. Richard McCurdy says, good evening from Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland's a place I'd love to visit. I've been asked to go over there by certain people, and there's one car in particular that I've actually been offered to film there. I met somebody at an event last September, and he's got a very interesting car. But haven't made it over to Northern Ireland yet. I think you can fly from Southampton Airport to Belfast, as far as I remember. So there's not too much of an excuse for not going, I suppose. Yeah. So Richard says, I've been enjoying the shambolic shuffles. Is actually what they're called. They're not. They are not show reports. They are not show walkarounds. They are shambolic shuffles. That's exactly what they are. No one quite does it in the same way, because things go wrong, and if you make a mistake, that's it. It's just in there. They're not edited in that way. Some people like to do that. Some people like to do voiceover and all kinds of editing stuff. I don't do that because I don't like doing it. It's just whatever I do things. But I'm glad you're happy with it. Mr. Hard from Rover Joe is here. Good evening to you, sir. Oh, Captain Mustard is here. Good evening, Captain Mustard from Project Nigel. That's a very sad thing that happened yesterday, actually. If you maybe some of you want to look at the Project Nigel channel for sort of what happened, there's a good video about it. It's a real shame. I mean, unfortunately, there's certain aspects of what happened that we can't discuss because of certain rules we have on this channel. But what I will say is that someone does not pay attention whilst they're driving and causing basically a massive kind of shunt with 3 different cars in it is silly. That's all I can say. It's just a bit silly. And Bad Book says to Captain Mustard, "Let's hope to have a calm Sunday." And it sounds like that he has, so that's good. I'm very pleased to hear that actually, because it's not the kind of thing that you want to have happen in your life, really. Yeah, it's a sad thing that's happened. Right, I think we got up with the comments now. So some of my sort of favourite videos that Ian Seabrook ever did are things like the Morris Marina, and then the Mark 6 Escort Cabriolet. Now, I've been very blessed to go to Great British Car Journey a couple of times, and they've got a Marina and an Escort Mark 6 Cabriolet. And I've done the Marina video. They're really not that bad, Marinas, to be honest. I've driven so many worse cars than the Morris Marina. Honestly, I have. They're really not that bad. I think the Vauxhall Viva in my mind was worse than the Marina, to be honest. Escort Mark 6 Cabriolet, which I think me and Seabrook really hated. I mean, he wasn't possibly in the best place to review something like that, but he didn't like it. I'm not really, kind of anti Ford myself. And some people have accused me of being that in the past, but one of my favourite cars I've ever driven on my channel is Mr. Coleman's 1982 Ford Granada Estate. That's one of my favourite cars I've ever driven on my channel. Driven numerous Ford Focuses, they're pretty good cars. Driven a Ford Puma, really enjoyed that. Driven a very early first generation Ford Ka, really enjoyed that. I've never owned any Fords myself, but they were such a big part of our sort of collective culture and memory in this country for so long that I like to sampling them. And my grandfather had a Mark II Fiesta Gear Auto. It was the last car that he ever had. He died in 1990. He bought the car in early 1989 and he did 1,000 miles in it. So, yeah, I never got to drive that, unfortunately. My other grandfather had two Escorts, a Mark 5B, like the one I drove in 2021, and then a Mark 6, which I haven't driven a Mark 6 actually, so I really should drive that Mark 6 Cabriolet, great for a car journey. But yeah, Ford made a lot of good cars. Even the bad ones were sort of made good by just extremely good marketing and knowing how to appeal to a certain type of person with their cars, and they were real geniuses at that. And it's a real kind of mystery as to sort of how, from the heights of sort of the 1990s, when actually Vauxhall and Opel were outselling Ford in this country, to now, where last month, and there'll be a video about this soon, Audi was the top selling brand in the UK. Isn't that extraordinary? Where we've gone from kind of Ford and Vauxhall vying it out at the top, and Vauxhall Opel being kind of actually at some stage in the 90s the number one brand of car in Europe, to it being Audi, which is supposed to be like, I don't know, it was a premium brand. But if you sell more cars than Ford and Volkswagen, does that make you a premium brand? I think not. I'm afraid, Captain Mustard, that the 25 you have is something we can't discuss on the channel. We could discuss it, what happened. I don't really want to go into that when people could just watch the video. And obviously things are ongoing about that terrible situation. But I'm afraid we can't discuss that particular car, which is just the way that it goes, I'm afraid. Paulie Galtieri says Ian's love of absolute base spec cars has told me the name Hub Nut Spec. According to Hub Nut Spec, yes, it has. I think the closest thing I ever drove to a spec that he should have driven rather than me was the 1983 Saab 900. It was a base spec 4-speed saloon in beige with a beige cloth interior. I couldn't imagine anything more sort of appropriate for him. I should have been driving, like a nice late facelift SE, one of those, but no. No, I drove the one that was more appropriate for him, with just 100 horsepower and a single carb. Wonderful. Julian Knight says I ever consider doing international shambolic shuffle at one of many European shows. I suppose so, but the thing is with it is that we don't have a lot of sort of funds allocated to fancy kind of European tours and things like that on this channel. It's not the sort of thing that we tend to do, because as I keep saying, I'm not a journalist. I'm not a motoring expert. I source cars for people or private clients, and they're quite modest cars that I source. That's where a lot of my knowledge comes from, and also just generally, like many of you, being into cars from a young age, I don't have, in commas, like kind of professional qualifications and things like that. And when I go to events where people are actually print journalists, or they've sort of kind of been on the show circuit for a while, as opposed to just buying a ticket and turning up, which is what I've done, then I don't feel particularly that I am really in the same category as people like that, really. But yeah, I'm not going to rule that out. I mean, it could happen at some point. Stiff Upper Lip says, I liked Ian's Skoda Estelle review. Yeah, I want to try one of those older Skodas. I want to try maybe like a sort of Felicia and a Favorite and things like that. But I've heard the steering on Favorites is absolutely, utterly terrible. Oh, it is bad. Yeah. But I could have a go. And I've driven some very heavy cars with no power steering before. James 101 says, Dunsford Land Rover Trust launched museum this week. Really? It's interesting. I've never heard of that one. Monty Ecut, what's your opinion on Citroen 2CVs? That's a very appropriate question for the topic of tonight's live stream, Monty. I don't know. I don't really have much to say about those at all. I'm not very familiar with them. Obviously I know the production life, and I know what a Ripple Bonnet 2CV is, and I know about the fact that they had enlarged engines that went along, and that production ended in Spain, and there were tons of special editions and things like that. But yeah, I don't have a lot to say about them. I don't necessarily have a desire to drive one or anything, because you can see someone driving a 2CV on multiple other channels, including obviously in Seabrook's own channel. There's not really much else to say as far as I'm concerned. I prefer things that have a few more luxury features and don't necessarily feel like you're going to die every time you drive them. I've driven some cars that feel like that, and it's not really necessarily my preference. I forgot to actually speak about something that Sean Kirk actually mentioned earlier on, that the purchase and rejuvenation of Took, which is with a C rather than a K, was a genius for YouTube content. I'm not sure why Ian Seabrook wanted to in the cars. I think he got them in 2018, went down to a sort of a yard in Sussex and picked them up, where they'd survived being crushed when a lot of them were taken off the road in 2003. Yeah, I have seen that car. It's in the well, it's not metal, is it? It's made of sort of plastic or something, isn't it? That car. It's not metal or anything, but I've seen it several times actually, and it's not in great condition. The body's all covered in sort of pimples and crazing and things like that. But yeah, it's obviously worked really well for him. When I went to the Hub Nut social event earlier this month, a lot of you would have seen that video that I did, and I actually had 2 offers of cars to film from that event as well, which is extraordinary. One of them, I've already set a date to film it, but I followed the previous generation in the car to the Model 70, which is the one that took it. The previous generation, when I followed that in, and it's so slow and just looks so dangerous. So it's not really me, but it's just an iconic image of the channel and things like that, isn't it? The Reliant Fox is an iconic thing as well. Yeah, I don't remember ever seeing those on the road when I was younger, despite the fact they were definitely around. I just don't remember them really. Don't remember the Indy cars and things, which would have been around, but I just don't remember them. Rose Chooks Tracy's Afterburn Triton Monger says to Captain Mustard, I'd like to know, I was pleased to see Rover Eric badging has survived the onslaught. It has, that is true. I've seen the video on the Project Idol channel, and it did. Paulie Gadjiri says, a Skoda Felicia Lauren and Clement would be appropriate for the channel. They never made a Lauren and Clement Felicia, I'm afraid. They didn't make one. The highest specification, there was one called the Magic, another one begins with a P, but I've forgotten the name of the top spec one. Of those came with electric windows, I think air conditioning. Felicias weren't very well equipped, particularly. I've driven one years and years ago. It was a 1.6 estate I drove, and it's all right. This one had an airbag in it, not all of them did. A lot of them had the old 1.3 OHV engine, which would have come out of the Estelle. And I really want to drive a car with that engine, actually. I don't think I ever have. No, I haven't, actually. I've never driven a car with that OHV Skoda engine. There were some Seats and Skodas that had that later. I think it was discontinued like 2004 from memory. Originally, right at the end, it was a 1 litre 1.4. The Lizzie man says having a Estelle and the steering was really light. Paid $120 for it and sold it 18 months later for £30. Well, that's not too bad in terms of depreciation, is it? So yeah, there we go. Shouts at the evening all. Anton says, I like the Citroens that he's had. My favourite was the XM, but we can't discuss it. No, we can't discuss the XM on this channel. Mark from Babbitt says, Indycars are fiberglass, yeah, fiberglass kind of plastic. I think people use those terms interchangeably for some reason. That's why the Reliant Robins are called plastic pigs. Although, whether they're any good, I don't know, actually, to be honest. And Mark said Indycars never looked great when they were new. Yeah, I suppose they sort of had that kind of sort of lived-in look about them, didn't they? Captain Mustard says, welcome to the visit. I haven't forgotten about coming up to see the Project Nigel kind of headquarters. It will happen at some point. It's because I live so far away. I live a long way from Rochdale, and so these things take a long time to actually plan. But it will happen at some point, I'm sure. Mark from Bad Book says, my brother's shed is an original Indycar timber garage. A previous owner was a World War II disabled veteran. I've seen the really early invalid carriages, and they are really strange things. They're kind of just like a motorcycle with someone sort of leaning back in a seat and just with like a sort of very basic cover over top of it. Paulie says there was a Lauren and Clement specification model. Bless you. Are you absolutely sure? Because I have never heard of one of those. I know the Magic, and there's one more that begins with a P. That was another higher special edition with the Felicius, but I've never heard of a Lauren and Clement Felicity. Not aware that there is, but there was one. I'll just type that in and I'll actually see. We can actually see if there was actually one of these, and we'll find out. Oh, look, here we go. Oh, there's some pictures of it as well. Oh my gosh. Look at this. Ooh. Oh, look. Is this an actual one here? So it's a 1.6, that makes sense. It's there an inside picture of it. I think we've got one here. Let's just see. I mean, that's a picture of a Felicia, all right, but you need to, if you want Lauren and Clement, you'll be wanting like electric windows and air conditioning and things like that. And I can't see on that interior picture that there is one. Oh, here we go. There's another picture here. What about this one? Oh my gosh. Okay. I think this one's got, yeah, it's got a leather interior as well. It's really weird. The Lauren and Clement I found here, I don't know if it's a real one or not, but it's got a leather interior, alright. So, yeah, okay, fair enough. But it's still got windy windows in the front. Why would you want a Felicia with a leather interior and windy windows? Why would you want that? So yeah, I've gone off those now because I don't want windy windows in my car. Why do I want front windy windows in my car? Why would I want that? Some people like Ian Seabrook like that kind of thing, but I'm not one of them, I'm afraid. I couldn't see a beige leather interior on the Lauren and Clements. I could see like a green interior. Steve Hubblett makes a good point here. He says, weren't the cars all recalled and taken off the road? Yeah, by the successor to the DHSS or Ministry of Health, depending on how old you are, I suppose. Yeah, they were supposed to have been removed all from the road and scrapped in 2003. For whatever reason, some of them survived, mainly in this field in Sussex, and the destruction that they were supposed to have was never carried out. And, the videos that were made after that, where he literally hired this box van, this DAF, because he had his grandfather rights on his license, because he passed his test before 1998, I think it is. He could just drive around in a truck up to certain limit. He hired a truck and they put the cars in the back of the DAF. I think it was a DAF truck. and he just drove them back to Wales, away from Sussex. I don't have the right license to be able to do that, and I'm not really that interested in driving bigger things. I have driven some fairly large kind of vans, and I don't really like doing that particularly. Some of you will think I'm an idiot, and why can't I do that? But I just don't really have any affinity for it particularly. There are quite a few people on my channel actually who are professional lorry drivers actually, and have all sorts of qualifications that I don't. I'm not really the best driver in the world particularly. I'm not really. Some of you probably far better than I am. To think about other stuff that's appeared on the channel, particular ones I've enjoyed. Yes, there was the Alfa Romeo GTV6 that he drove, I think, in Australia, from memory, in traffic, which he didn't like very much. I had the privilege of driving a 916 Spider of that generation, a 2003, that I was offered just after I had coronavirus, October 2021, I think I drove that, by a channel viewer called Callum, who has supplied masses of cars for the channel. I think it's 6 or 7 he's done. Escort Mark 3, Maestro Van den Pla, the first Maestro Van den Pla, automatic, which he no longer owns actually. The Renault 5 was one of his, the Peugeot 208. He allowed me to have a go in his friend's Mark II Fiesta Auto, which was great because that was the first of a car on Sensible Secondhand Classics, that one. So I'm very grateful to Callum for sort of giving me these sort of experiences that I've had actually, including the Alpha. That was one of his too, and it was good fun. That. Yeah, I think that's maybe enough for this evening, unless anybody has anything else to say. Adam Tom says, the Lexus LS400 that Ian Seabrook had is probably the least type of that car. Well, he kind of likes this sort of weird Japanese stuff. I think it was a Honda SMX he used to have, and then that Toyota Starlet, and the Mazda 323F, which I've also owned one of those, which is a lot better than the one he had. Not boasting or anything, it was a lot newer. It was a 97 and I owned it from 2002 2005. So obviously by the time it was 2019, those 323Fs are very, very old. And I was able to actually tell him, because I remember the sunroof from when I had a factory sunroof, that actually there was an aftermarket sunroof in the 323F, which I don't know what happened to that now. The engine that he had in that was the same engine that I had in mine, and by the end of my ownership, the piston rings were actually going in that. I think it was on 75,000, and for some reason that seemed to be quite common in the Japanese engines, but piston rings were sort of a little bit worn, and you could do something about it, or you could just drive it like that and just have a little bit of smoke when you started it from cold. Those were the options, really. Paulie Gauthier says the Voxer Senator 2012 valve was a good review. Yes, I remember that. That was a good review, actually. I enjoyed that. I also enjoyed the Leyland P76. There's actually one of these in this country. It's a Targa 4 special edition. I've seen it a couple of times. Mark from Bad Book says Ian Seabrook have a Camry estate. Yeah. Ian Seabrook broke all the rules of car buying when he bought that Toyota Camry estate. He paid too much for it. Dealer was dodgy. He got too emotionally involved. I've done actually a very, very blog about this, about getting too emotionally involved in car purchases and how it can go wrong. And really, that was just the classic example of what happens when you do get too emotionally involved in a car purchase. So anyway, I think that's it actually for this evening. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Mark says, was it 1.8? No, it's 1.5 of one. Had Mazda Z engine, which I think got a bit better actually. Had a cam button in it. You had to take the engine out to do the cam at 56,000 miles in those engines. The later ones, like the ones in the Mazda 2, second generation Mazda 2, that was a chain engine, and they're a bit more reliable, I think. But anyway, thank you ever so much indeed once again for watching a slightly less than pressure live stream number 46. And obviously into bought the Camry estate for the trim rear wipers, which isn't particularly the most logical reason, is it? But if he was logical, we wouldn't have his channel, so never mind. Yes, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. And we will see you again soon for another not really very professional live stream.